The galaxy trembled under the sound of war. Across a desolate battlefield, the human forces were fighting for survival. Blood, dirt, and the stench of burning metal filled the air as soldiers scrambled for cover. Overhead, massive alien warships loomed, casting a shadow over the human encampment, their engines humming like 1,000 bees in unison. From the speaker embedded in the ground, the voice of General Zoroth echoed, cold and disdainful, "Humans. Cowards. You cower in the face of true strength. You will never defeat us." The words hit like a slap, sending shockwaves through the ranks. A dozen soldiers looked up from their positions, eyes filled with uncertainty. Some shuddered, others gritted their teeth. General Zoroth's words weren't just an insult, they were a challenge. A challenge that lingered in the air, thick with tension. Lucas Grayson, a young soldier, stood among them, his rifle clenched tightly in his hands. His pulse raced as the general's words reverberated in his mind. He was barely 25, a rookie by the standards of the others around him. His mind screamed for him to retreat, to run to safety like the others. But his legs remained frozen, rooted to the ground, as the taunts of the alien general burned through his veins. "Why are you standing there, Lucas?" Sergeant Lara Jensen's voice cut through his thoughts like a knife. Her voice was sharp, like the crack of a whip, but there was a note of concern in it. She was a seasoned veteran, and to her, fear was a foreign concept. Her long brown hair, now streaked with dirt, swung behind her as she crouched beside him. I can't," Lucas muttered, his voice betraying his uncertainty. "I'm not like them. I'm not like you. I'm not ready for this. I'm not built for battle." Lara's eyes, hard as steel, softened for a moment. She could see the tremor in his hands. The fear was eating away at him. But fear was something she knew how to handle. She leaned in, her face inches from his, and spoke low, almost conspiratorially. "Lucas, no one's built for battle. But we fight because it's the only choice we have. The general doesn't know us. He doesn't know what we're capable of. It's time to show him." Lucas swallowed hard, but the words stuck in his throat. The chaos of the battlefield raged around him, the screams of his comrades and the roar of enemy artillery. His feet felt heavier than ever, as though gravity itself had betrayed him. His mind was a swirl of doubt, and every instinct screamed at him to run. To hide. But Lara had never been one to run. "You want to prove him wrong?" she pressed. "Then stop standing here and fight." Lucas's eyes flickered toward the horizon. The alien ships were massing, preparing for their next assault. His gaze caught the shimmering outline of General Zoroth's flagship, a towering, monstrous ship, looming above. It felt like a dark omen. But that was exactly the problem. The aliens thought humans were weak, thought they were easy prey. If Lucas didn't act now, they'd lose everything. A deep breath filled his lungs. The weight of the rifle in his hands shifted. He could feel the warmth of the metal against his skin, grounding him. His grip tightened. His legs wavered for a moment, but then he straightened. "I'll prove them wrong," he said, his voice more steady than he felt. His eyes locked onto the flag that waved high above the human camp, the symbol of humanity's last stand. Lara smiled faintly, nodding once. "Good. Now, let's make them regret thinking we're cowards." In the distance, the first wave of enemy troops began their descent, armored giants with sleek weapons and cold, glowing eyes. Lucas's heart pounded in his chest, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from resolve. He wasn't going to run. Not anymore. With Lara by his side, Lucas sprinted forward, diving into the fray. The battle wasn't just about victory, it was about proving that humanity was more than just survivors. They were fighters. And if they were to go down, it wouldn't be because of fear. The sound of gunfire filled the air, the crackle of energy blasts igniting the dust around them. Lucas fired his weapon, the recoil vibrating through his hands. The enemy soldiers, larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced, fell under the hail of human bullets, but there were too many. Too many to count. Through the chaos, Lucas caught a glimpse of Zoroth's towering figure at the back of the battlefield, directing his forces. There was something almost regal about the alien's stance, his confidence unwavering. But Lucas knew one thing: Zoroth underestimated them. Underestimated humanity. As Lucas ran deeper into the field, the tension built, the world around him fading into a blur. His feet carried him toward the heart of the storm. His fear still gnawed at him, but it no longer paralyzed him. It fueled him. He wouldn't prove the alien general right. Not today. But as Lucas pushed forward, the question lingered in the back of his mind: would it be enough? Would courage alone be enough to take down the monster leading the invasion? The deafening roar of battle still echoed through the air. Lucas's chest heaved as he ducked behind a jagged piece of debris, his rifle clutched tightly in his hands. The chaos of the battlefield was more brutal than he had ever imagined. Alien war machines stomped across the wreckage of fallen soldiers, their sleek forms almost mocking the desperation of the humans fighting back. The ground trembled beneath him as another barrage of energy blasts tore through the dirt. "Stay low." Lara's voice pierced through the madness. She was crouched next to him, her rifle steady in her hands, eyes sharp and focused. Lucas could see the calmness in her face, the kind of serenity that only came from years of experience. She had fought in wars before, had seen carnage beyond his imagination. Yet, there was something different in her gaze now, something darker. Lucas's fingers tightened on his rifle as he peeked out from behind cover, watching the enemy forces advance. They were relentless, their tactics efficient, crushing anything that stood in their way. But Lucas noticed something strange. The aliens weren't just pushing forward, they were playing with them. Like a hunter toying with its prey. "This isn't just an invasion," Lucas muttered under his breath. "It's a test." Lara's sharp eyes flicked to him. "What do you mean?" "Their general, Zoroth, he doesn't just want to win. He wants to prove something. He wants to show us that we don't stand a chance. He's been watching us, waiting for us to break." Lara's lips pressed into a thin line, her jaw tight with suppressed anger. "And we're playing right into his hands." The realization settled in like a heavy weight. Lucas had never seen a battle quite like this. They were outgunned, outmatched, and yet they were still here, fighting. Humanity wasn't just defending, they were surviving on sheer willpower. But Lucas could feel the cracks beginning to show. The soldiers were exhausted, morale slipping. Each wave of alien assault felt like a hammer to the heart. The distant hum of alien engines grew louder as another wave of invaders descended from the sky. A dozen or more landing crafts touched down, sending up clouds of dust. Each craft unleashed squads of heavily armored alien soldiers, dark, hulking figures that moved with mechanical precision. Lucas watched as they formed into squads, sweeping the battlefield like predators seeking their next meal. Lara's hand gripped his shoulder, pulling him back into cover. "Lucas," she said, her voice calm but urgent, "we need to do something. If we don't disrupt their command structure, we'll be overrun." He nodded, his heart pounding as he followed her through the debris. The sounds of laser fire and explosions were deafening, but his focus remained on Lara's every move. She was leading them through the chaos with the precision of a seasoned commander, her every step calculated, every movement deliberate. "This way," she whispered, ducking low as they sprinted toward a small building that had been partially destroyed. It offered a decent vantage point over the battlefield, a place to plan their next move. Once inside, Lara crouched by a wall, peering out of a cracked window. Lucas followed, still trying to make sense of the war unfolding before him. The alien forces were systematic, relentless, but there was something about them that felt artificial. It was as if they were not fighting for survival, but for validation. Zoroth had something to prove, and Lucas was beginning to wonder if the aliens' arrogance might be their downfall. "Lara, we've got to do something about Zoroth," Lucas said, his mind racing. "If we take him down, maybe the whole invasion falls apart." Lara nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing. But he's not going to be easy to reach. He's surrounded by a squad of elite guards. Then we make it a two-pronged attack. You and I. No, Lara cut him off, her eyes narrowing. You're not ready for this. This isn't some foot patrol. Zoroth's personal guard will tear you apart before you even get close. Lucas felt a flash of frustration, but he knew better than to argue with her now. Lara had the experience, the intuition that he lacked. But his resolve was burning stronger than ever. He wasn't going to sit back while humanity was crushed under the heel of this invasion. We don't have time for hesitation, he said, his voice low and steady. If we don't take the fight to him now, we'll lose. I can't sit here and wait for someone else to save us. Lara studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, finally, she sighed. Fine. But we do this my way. Lucas barely had time to process her words before a distant explosion rocked the ground, sending a tremor through the building. Outside, the battlefield was shifting. Alien warships were repositioning, their massive guns charging for another round of fire. The odds were narrowing, and the decision to strike had become inevitable. Lara glanced at Lucas, her eyes hardening. Get your gear. We move out in 2 minutes. As she turned to prepare, Lucas's mind raced. The battle ahead would be their greatest test. The aliens had underestimated them, thought of them as weak, cowards. But now, humanity had no choice but to fight back. And Lucas knew, deep down, that no matter the outcome, this would be the moment that defined them. No longer would they be the hunted. They were the hunters now. And they were about to prove it. The night sky burned with streaks of fire as alien ships cut through the clouds, their lights casting an eerie glow over the battlefield. Lucas crouched low, his breath shallow, the pulse of the war drums thundering in his ears. The plan was set. Lara's orders were clear. He wasn't going to back out. Not now. Not when humanity's last hope hung on a knife's edge. The wind whipped through the broken remnants of the city, carrying with it the acrid scent of burning metal and scorched earth. Each blast of alien fire echoed through the air, reminding him of the chaos that had become their reality. But Lucas could feel something in his gut. This wasn't just another fight. This was the turning point. Ready? Lara's voice cut through the tension like a sharp knife. He looked up at her, nodding. Her eyes glinted with a fierce resolve, but he could see the weariness behind them. She'd seen far too many battles. Too many losses. But there was no time for doubt now. Lara wasn't going to let this be the end. And neither was he. Lara motioned for Lucas to follow as they moved toward the outskirts of the wreckage. The alien stronghold loomed ahead, a twisted fortress of metal and alien architecture. But it wasn't the walls that worried Lucas, it was the enemy's general, Zoroth. The towering, ruthless leader who had been toying with humanity for weeks, testing their resolve. We can't afford to waste any time, Lara whispered, her eyes scanning the battlefield. Zoroth won't wait for us to make the first move. He knows we're coming. I know, Lucas said, clenching his fists. But we can't just keep playing defense. It's time to strike. The ground beneath their feet shuddered again, and Lucas glanced up. A massive alien warship descended from the clouds, its thrusters roaring as it touched down with a violent tremor. The sound of its landing was a grim reminder of the overwhelming force the invaders commanded. You take the left flank, Lara instructed, her voice tight with urgency. I'll take the right. We hit them hard, disrupt their formation. Then we push for Zoroth. Lucas hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. This was about making a stand. About showing the aliens that humanity wasn't as weak as they thought. But the path to Zoroth wasn't going to be easy. They had to get past his elite guards, their fiercest warriors, designed for one thing, destruction. We'll make it, Lucas muttered to himself, gripping his rifle tightly. The thought of running from this fight was unbearable. If he didn't push forward now, he might never have the chance again. With a final nod to Lara, he bolted, moving through the wreckage with calculated precision. His feet pounded against the ground, each step louder than the last as he closed in on his target. He was no longer just a soldier, he was a force of nature, driven by a single thought, to end this war, once and for all. As he reached the first of the alien barricades, Lucas slowed, crouching behind a column of twisted metal. His breath was steady, his body moving on instinct as he scanned the area. The aliens were everywhere, their black armor glinting in the dim light, their eyes sharp, ever watchful. They weren't just soldiers, they were predators, trained to kill without hesitation. But Lucas had something they didn't. Heart. He darted out from behind cover, firing off several quick shots at the nearest guard. The alien staggered back, a sizzling burst of green light erupting from its chest. It collapsed in a heap, but Lucas didn't wait to see it hit the ground. He was already moving again, darting between pieces of wreckage, using the terrain as his shield. Behind him, he could hear Lara's shots ring out in rapid succession. Her aim was precise, each shot a deadly promise. She wasn't just a soldier, she was a hunter. And together, they were a force to be reckoned with. But the closer they got to Zoroth's stronghold, the more the tension built. The air felt heavier, charged with the electricity of impending battle. Lucas's pulse quickened. He could almost feel Zoroth's presence, looming in the distance, a dark shadow that threatened to engulf everything in its path. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath him again, but this time it wasn't from an explosion. It was something far worse. Something massive, moving with the power of a storm. Lucas turned just in time to see a monstrous alien war machine emerging from the smoke. It was larger than anything he had seen before, clad in thick armor, its guns capable of shredding entire squads with a single shot. Its glowing red eyes scanned the battlefield, and Lucas's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an assault unit. It was a walking nightmare. He raised his rifle, but the machine's shield flared to life, deflecting his shots with ease. There was no way to break through its armor. He had no choice. He had to make it to Zoroth. "Lara," he shouted, but his voice was lost in the chaos. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to move, or this battle would be lost. With a surge of adrenaline, he broke from cover, sprinting toward the heart of the enemy formation. The war machine fired a shot in his direction, but Lucas was too fast, ducking just in time as the ground exploded in front of him. The force of the blast pushed him forward, but he kept running. Zoroth was waiting. And this time, Lucas wasn't going to run. He was going to make the aliens understand what humanity was truly capable of. The time for defense was over. It was time to attack. The roar of combat echoed across the ruined city as Lucas charged forward, his boots pounding against the cracked, jagged streets. The towering alien war machine loomed ahead, its hulking form shrouded in a haze of dust and smoke. The sound of its weapons charging filled the air, a deadly hum that made his heart race. This wasn't a battle, it was a war for survival. And humanity's survival rested on his shoulders. He could hear Lara's voice crackling through the comms, urgent and tense. "Lucas, get out of there. That thing will tear you apart." "I'm not stopping now, Lara," he gritted out, his voice sharp. "I'm going straight for Zoroth." "Lucas." No time to argue, he cut her off. His eyes locked onto the distant silhouette of the alien general, the one who had so arrogantly mocked humanity's resilience. The one who had underestimated them all. The ground rumbled beneath his feet as the war machine fired again, its massive cannons sending a shockwave of debris in every direction. Lucas ducked behind the cover of a shattered building, his muscles screaming in protest as he slid into position. He wasn't going to let fear or doubt slow him down. Not now. Not after everything they'd sacrificed. Taking a steadying breath, he peered around the corner. The machine was relentless, its weapons firing indiscriminately into the heart of the city. Every blast sent a ripple of destruction, and yet, Lucas could feel the weight of his resolve solidifying. He wasn't just another soldier in a war he had no control over. He was a human, a force of nature. And he was going to prove it to the aliens. Lara's voice cut through the static again, but this time, her tone was different. A mix of resolve and fear. "Zoroth is not like the others, Lucas. He's different. He'll tear you apart if you don't. I know what I'm doing, he replied, his words sharp. His fingers tightened around the grip of his rifle. I'm not backing down. He wasn't. The fire inside him burned hotter than the blast zones that surrounded him. This was more than a fight. This was about pushing back against the very force that sought to crush his people. He couldn't afford to wait any longer. It was time to take action. With a surge of adrenaline, he dashed from cover, using every ounce of speed to close the distance. The war machine tracked his movements, its glowing red eyes locking onto him as it fired another salvo in his direction. He heard the whoosh of the projectile hurtling toward him and dove to the ground just as it exploded behind him, sending a spray of debris into the air. His heart raced as he scrambled to his feet, barely avoiding the next blast. Every step felt like it could be his last, but Lucas pushed forward. He wasn't going to let fear stop him. Not now. Through the chaos, he saw it, Zoroth, standing at the edge of the stronghold, his tall, imposing figure outlined against the fiery sky. The alien general wasn't just a commander, he was a symbol of everything they had fought against. His presence sent a cold chill through Lucas's veins, but it was a chill that only fueled his determination. With every ounce of willpower, Lucas surged forward, weaving between debris and wreckage. Zoroth didn't move, didn't flinch. He stood there, watching, waiting for Lucas to come to him. And that was exactly what Lucas intended to do. Lara, Lucas said, his voice now steady despite the madness around him. I'm almost there. I'll finish this. He could almost hear Lara's breath on the other end of the comms, the hesitation hanging between them. Be careful. You don't know what you're walking into. I don't need to, Lucas said, narrowing his focus. I've already made up my mind. He pushed on, ignoring the blinding pain in his side from an earlier scrape. He wouldn't stop, not for anything. The alien general was within reach. As Lucas reached the threshold of the stronghold, the alien forces closed in. A dozen soldiers, all enhanced with alien technology and bloodthirsty ferocity, formed a tight circle around Zoroth. Their glowing eyes tracked his every move as he stepped forward. They were ready to tear him apart, but Lucas wasn't about to back down. Without warning, he fired, his shots ringing out with deadly precision. The first alien fell, its body crumpling to the ground, but the others didn't hesitate. They charged. Lucas fought with everything he had, his rifle crackling with energy as he fired again and again, taking down one soldier after another. His heart hammered in his chest, but it wasn't fear driving him. It was the need to show the aliens what humanity was truly capable of. A brutal blow from behind sent him crashing to the ground, his vision swimming. The alien soldier towered over him, its weapon raised high. But before it could strike, a sharp, crackling sound cut through the air, followed by the wet thud of a body hitting the ground. Lara appeared, her gun blazing, her movements fluid and precise as she mowed down the remaining aliens in her path. She reached him in seconds, offering a hand to help him up. You're not doing this alone, she said, her voice tight with resolve. Together, they approached Zoroth. The general's cold eyes met Lucas's with a mix of curiosity and disdain. You truly believe you can defeat me? Zoroth's voice was like ice, deep and mocking. Lucas met his gaze without flinching. I don't need to defeat you. I just need you to understand one thing. Humanity will never bow. With that, they attacked, the final battle just beginning.